if something is just a simplified prompt, then you're gonna know within reason, okay, I think that is probably AI, but the more thoughtful your prompt writing becomes, or the inputs become, then the more indistinguishable the output becomes. And you're like, I don't even know this has to be human because it had a very human touch. And I think that's what people are missing in all this. And I know with creatives, the moment you bring up AI, people start to clutch their pearls. But I do think that there is something to be said about the creative process is still at play. You just have to think about it differently.
Hello, everyone. This is Tech Marketing Rewired from Mighty and True, and I'm your host, Kevin Kerner. This new season, we're focusing on what we call past the pilot, what marketers are doing now that the AI experiments are over. For the opener, I wanted someone who teaches this stuff and actually uses it. Sean Richards is a educator at Concordia University and runs creative for a living. Of course, he also teaches young students about the future of AI. He is also writing a musical about Bigfoot, and we get into that and a bunch of other things like why the future of our educational system needs a change, why the AI rollout is such a mess, and where humans still win. So let's get into it. This is a fun one. This is Tech Marketing Rewired. Sean, great to have you on the show.
Good to be here, Kevin. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, thanks so much. This will be our first episode of the season, so I'm really excited to have you on. Let's just get it kicked off. You have a really interesting position now as an educator, and I know you have a creative background too. And I wonder if you could just tell us a little bit how you got started in education, and then I would be really interested to see like how you see the shift now that we're entering the agentic era. You've been an educator for 6 years now. You got a really interesting background, and the timing is of what's happening is kind of crazy. So just give us a little like background.
Yeah, absolutely. I've been a creative for the past 10, 11 years, copywriter by trade, creative director, done a lot in that space. And becoming a professor was a happy accident because I was the worst student of all time in college, D for diploma, A for effort. And
I'm right
I,
with you there.
you get it, you get it. And I just wasn't very interested in the way a lot of education was set up, but I had some incredible professors along the way who showed me, oh, there actually is kind of a cool path to create. And it turns out it was the old school Socratic method. And so one of those educators was the dean of the School of Business and Communication that I studied at Concordia University. And she, against her better judgment, decided to hire me after I got my MBA. And I came in, I taught a capstone for marketing, absolutely loved it. And my whole focus was, how do I create a class that was angled around what I wish I was taught, of just the actual, because a lot of it is just so textbook anecdotal, like, hey, how to know if you're ready for market or whatever, and just things that no one's ever going to ask you. Like I taught a sales course that was like, well, let's understand what the manufacturer is and all this. I'm like, no, like that, none of that matters. Do you understand a pipeline? Do you understand how to make a cold call? Do you understand, funnel management? And so I just kind of took that sense of, man, I got my butt kicked for the first couple of years outside of graduation. How can I set students up so they're going to hit the ground running day one? And that's kind of what led me on this path. And now we're at almost 8 years as a
Mm.
adjunct professor of marketing, communication, and some sales classes here and there. But it's been a wild ride, and AI has been just kerosene on it, and it's been really fun to see. I do not have the boogeyman mindset that I think a lot of academics do have with AI right now. I think that it is obviously an incredible innovation. And as well, I'm sure we'll get into, there's probably some nuance that needs to happen in all this too. But it's been a fun front row seat seeing with the students, especially with Gen Z.
Yeah, and I wonder what you hear from them. And I just read a stat this morning that adults under age 30 are more likely to say that AI will have a negative effect on society and on them personally than those that are older. What do you
Hmm.
hear from the students right now about the use of AI getting into the marketplace at this time?
Well, it's hard not, if you're under the age of 30, it's hard to not be a doomer if you're scrolling TikTok or Instagram
Yeah.
when so much of what's being reinforced. And to be fair, this is a tough market right now. If you're a creative, let's just call a spade a spade. I think what we're seeing right now is a correction in the market from the overhiring that happened during COVID. And I think that you have a lot of
Yeah.
companies that are over their skis, and they're using AI as the convenient excuse to reduce headcount. And I get it, but also it's tough when you just had so many people telling you, hey, this economy is just going to keep going, going, going. And the correction hasn't really happened the way that it needs to. I'm no economist, but the way that it,
Yeah.
in theory, needs to. And I think, unfortunately, Gen Z is holding the bag right now. And so they're seeing, like, oh, man, what is the point if this thing is literally being trained to replace me? I don't think that's actually the case. I think that we've seen the last 3 months, the tea leaves have kind of played out a little bit, and I think a lot of these companies have scaled back. I mean, you look at Uber blew through their AI budget in
Hmm.
Q1,
Yeah.
and I think a lot of people are saying like, "Oh, this is not tenable. We can't afford to use Claude code on every single ticket that comes our
Yeah.
way." And so now we have to scale back a little bit. And so I do believe that it's going to come back around, and in the next 5 years there's going to be a little bit more optimism around our relationship with AI. But understandably, if you're a college student right now, eh, just the way that things have played out for the last 3 years, I think you have every right to be frustrated. And I don't think that it is indicative of where we're going, but it's something that I try to be mindful of when I'm having these conversations with them, because they can't get away from it. It's inevitable. You and I both know AI isn't going anywhere. Now, I don't think it's going to be the foregone conclusion that, you know, the Altmans and all of them have been touting, but I do think that it's like the dot com. All the Everyone and their mom was getting VC funding, and then
Yeah.
when the tides came in, you had a few players left. And I think that's what we're going to see in the next 2 to 3 years. After all these dot AIs get washed away and the jobs kind of settle, you're going to see the quiet rehiring happening. People are going to get lower position levels at a lower price point, and they're going to quietly get Gen Z back in the workplace.
Yeah, I think your comment on tokens is really the thing because, like, when Fable came out, it was interesting that it came out with, free time up I think it was gonna be up to the 22nd when you could use it for quote, unquote, "free," and then it would be token. You couldn't run it on your subscription anymore. So that token subsidization that all these, LLM companies are going through is gonna end, and we're gonna have to pay
Yeah.
through tokens, and that's gonna be a lot more expensive. There's another research company, they don't actually tell you. I have the $200 like max plan on
Yeah.
Claude, and, they don't tell you what that actually costs in tokens. Like, what would you have to pay instead of for your token usage? And there's a research company that said it was about if you max that 200 subscription out, it's about $8,000 a month worth of
Holy cannoli.
tokens, and there's
That's
just no
insane.
way. So there's a subsidization phase that's happening right now, and I think it's real. I never thought of it that way.
I mean, at that
When
point,
that
that's fewer lower
starts,
devs.
yeah, that's right, and you can't just do there's an unlimited backlog right now because you can just do everything, and once that settles, it'd be really interesting to see how that affects the youth job market because you're gonna have to go back to having them use these agentic tools, but not like build all the things, get rid of all the people, because that's just not gonna happen. What are you, how are you, changing the way you teach them because of this now, or are you? Or how do you approach AI in the classroom now?
Yeah, well, the first thing I tell students is, whether you realize or not, you've been using AI for most of your life, and for Gen Z especially. And it's just the packaging looks different. It's more comprehensive than it's ever been, obviously. But
Oh,
I
man,
mean,
that's a good point.
if you've used Grammarly, if you've used AutoTune, if you've used Siri, if you've like, it's been in like we've been inundated with it for a long time, and I think we've just never seen the marketing of AI so front and center.
Mhm.
And so I try to break that. But the other thing too is I'm really, the old teach a man to fish and he'll eat for a lifetime adage. But with students, like I think GLP-1s are a great analog here, where we've got this miracle drug, right? And we don't really fully know the effects of it and what's going to do. But if you were to sit here and ask me, hey, Sean, is a weight loss drug that we're not fully cognizant of better than chronic heart disease? Yeah, of course. And that's a trade I would take every day. However, if you don't fix the habits, if you don't teach good discipline and good fundamentals, then a shortcut doesn't work unless you know the path forward, or the actual path to get there. And I think the same with AI. It's a wonderful innovation, but innovation without discipline is ultimately useless and dangerous.
Yeah.
And what you have now is, if we don't address this in the classroom and teach them, hey, you're only as good as your prompt writing, you're only as good as the thought, as the inputs you give AI, then you're just going to see more and more slop in the market. And you know who really gets stuck with all this is the poor middle managers who have to read the slop coming from their
Oh
top level
gosh. Yeah.
and the slop coming from their directs, and and they have to sift through all this where everyone else is just saying, give me the path of least resistance, just write this brief or whatever. And it just becomes this mess of everyone's trying to outclaw each other. And so
Yeah.
my goal is, yeah, use AI on every assignment I give you, but use a thoughtful approach to this and ask questions of, hey, what are you trying to solve with AI? Like, what would
Yeah.
actually maximize this? And sometimes I think a lot of times my students find like, oh, I could have written that by myself and had a more thoughtful answer faster than the time it took me to actually go in and and correct the inputs with AI and tweak it.
Yeah.
And sometimes that's the case, not always, but just getting them to think critically has been the number one goal here. And then once they inject AI in that, then it's just they're off to the races, and
Yeah.
it's doing exactly what it should be doing.
Yeah. I wish. Do you think that do you think that change in how higher education is treating AI is going to happen? Because Mike, I have 3 kids in college right now, and they're it kind of runs the gamut. They have some teachers that are say, look, you need to learn the context, but you can use the heck out of it. If you don't learn anything from my class and you're just using AI, you're going to go on to the next class and you're not going to do very well, like the
Oh,
next level of classes. So, and then there's some teachers who are just completely against any use in any field. Do you think that, like, will that change in higher education over time?
I think higher education is due for reckoning one way or another. And I mean, the system is just I mean, a lot of universities operate as though it's still 1954 and that this job market is just waiting for their best and brightest to come out of here. When the reality of it is, if you're a business major, unfortunately, you'd probably be better off just graduating high school and starting and failing a business
Mm,
than, getting a 4-year degree with, you know, what, 60 to $100,000 in debt, depending on your circumstance.
yeah,
Now, that is a broad stroke, and obviously, what please don't hear me say I don't think that further education is helpful. I absolutely do, and I think it's a matter of, if you go into that, like, what can I glean? How can I improve here? And especially if you're in a more quantitative degree, or you're looking for something like going into the medical route or legal route, then yeah, obviously you have to go through those credentials. But I think especially what you're seeing in the business world is a need for academia to realize, hey, this is just a bad business model that
yeah,
we haven't kept up with the rising costs of living, the rising costs of inflation, and all that's packaging around us. And so we kind of have to give them the tools to be dangerous and hireable right now, as opposed to 4 years from now when they graduate and they have their cap and gown. And so I think there's a lot of folks who are just going to get weeded out because of that, and already and a lot of universities are coming around to this. And I think you're seeing
yeah,
more certs being offered. But the hard thing about
yes,
AI certs is it's moving so fast that by the time
yeah,
you're, Claude competent, or you have an understanding of design, you've already gotten passed up if within 3 months. And so you have to learn the next iteration. But I think I really do believe that universities are getting leaner. I think that they are starting to focus on the actual, like, hey, let's offer more nursing degrees, let's offer more, you know, uh, quantitative courses here, and I
it's
think
like
you're going to start
trades. Yeah,
trades. And I've been a
yeah,
big proponent of, there's, I mean, this was a stat as of 2012, so take it with a huge grain of salt. But back in 2012, there were 6.5 million trade jobs available in our country. I think that has
mhm,
leveled out a little bit, but there's still millions of available jobs that I think universities need to figure out, how do we better partner with 2-year accredited programs to offer other solutions and other alternatives, and then how do we take that same approach of apprenticeship to mastership in business? And I think
yeah,
I don't know what the exact answer to that question is, but I do think it looks something like having someone who is vetted and experienced in the field come in and say, similar to like a board certified doctor, hey, this group of legitimate doctors says that these candidates are ready to go. I think you need to start seeing that across the board in business as well.
yeah,
Now, who holds that title? I don't know. honestly, you'd be better than I would for that, Kevin, with your pedigree. But I do think that we need to get back to apprenticeship in some capacity, and that's where universities have failed.
Wow. Yeah. Yeah. Well, I hope, I certainly hope we have more educators like you and voices like that because I couldn't agree more, especially with four more kids getting ready to go into higher education. I'm like, I'm hoping something changes, both pricing and approach and the amount of time it takes. There's so much there that needs to be fixed. Your perspective as a creative director and copywriter and educator and academic and someone that actually works on the stuff is super interesting to me. And it kind of goes into the next conversation I wanted to have with you around like I think last year, maybe the last couple of years have been a lot of pilot and experimentation using this stuff. And there's pressure, at least, whether this is real or not, to like go beyond that pilot phase and
Sure.
actually get to the production phase of things. Like we're done with the pilot. I think a
Yeah.
lot of that's coming from boards and senior executives and the pressure down on the employees. I wonder if do you think we're beyond the pilot in the rollout of all this stuff and what can actually be operationalized beyond experiments at this point?
Good question. I think we're expected to be beyond the pilot. If you ask any, C-level executive, I think the reality is a lot of employees still don't necessarily know their left hand from their right in terms of a critical way to use it. And I'll give you an example of, going back to the slop. I had a client who, leading up to the World Cup, they want to just flood the internet with SEO of trying, hey, we're a travel brand and we want to catch all the folks coming in to America to experience this. And so effectively they asked, my team and I to write, what turned out to be about 30 articles in the span of a week. And we're like, this is just, it's like, a 3-man operation. Like at pre AI, it would take me like 8 to 12 hours to write a really thoughtful research article. Even with AI, it cuts that down. But I mean, 30 in a week is just insane.
Hmm.
But those were the kind of demands that AI has created is, the fallacy was, oh, it's going to give you more time to be creative. Like, no, we all know it just gives you more time to create more slop and more like quicker outputs. And I think that's what a lot of employees are feeling is they don't necessarily feel like they have the autonomy, the bandwidth, the safety and job security to actually learn this thoughtfully. Now,
Yeah.
with that, I want to give huge props to Canva. I don't know if you saw this, but a few weeks back, they announced that they basically cleared the decks for all of their employees across the company and gave them a week to do nothing but learn good AI hygiene and
That's
good
awesome.
AI practice.
Yep.
And I believe that is the gold standard. And for everyone who's just, cynically looking at like, well, it's Canva. Like, well, I think any company with enough prep time, you can figure out how to make this an actual, everyone's got their AI czar or whatever, but it's always turns into they don't know what they're doing either. And you've just kind of said, yeah, go figure it out because that's what our investors are asking for. But to actually sit down and say, again, what is the problem we're actually trying to solve? How is AI going to improve? Is it, hey, we have way too many help desk tickets and we don't know how to fix this? Is it a matter of we're not keeping up with AEO and we want better online searchability and presence? Great. Take the scientific method, take whatever your hypothesis is, and then train around that, and then A/B test it. And if it doesn't work, you can tweak it and tailor it. But right now, what you have is so many folks are just said being told be an end-to-end AI expert without real any kind of guideline or guardrail,
Yeah.
and as a result like you just get more and more slop and more confusion and more frustration. Either people are getting laid off or they're getting pushed out of their jobs or they're getting burned out. And I think to fix that you got to just basically do what Canva did and say, all right, let's clear the decks, let's sit down and say what is the why, and then let's build from that.
Yeah. To your 30 articles in one, in a week sort of thing. My experience is that maybe we're a little past the pilot in the understanding of how to use the tools and the harness. You kind of understand how all the pieces fit together now. And then, but there's still like to be able to do that at scale, do something like that, you have to build some infrastructure and skills around what you're trying to do, such that the output is just completely locked in. And at that
Right.
point, it could even be built into an app, and then that app can do the thing. But we are not at the stage at this point where the productionized AI can happen uh, and certainly an employee can't do that on their own. You mentioned something
No.
about autonomy. Like part of the issue with our clients is that they want to do this stuff, but they just don't have the keys. They don't have the
Yeah.
ability to do it. So it's like they're told, "Go do the AI thing." Oh, but, you can't we're not gonna give you access to all the things, and you can't build anything.
Good luck.
It's a lot easier for me as a business owner and small business to get in and experiment, but to operationalize that at scale, it's just I think it's tougher, and we're not out of the
Yeah.
pilot phase yet.
Yeah.
Um, have you seen any particular ways that you've studied that is an optimal way to roll these things out? I mean, I love the Canva idea, but do you have
Mhm.
any other examples of successes or ways that, this can be made better, uh,
Yeah, I mean, and
adopted?
sure. Anecdotally, I have found a lot of success in following folks on Twitter who are, from like a
That's
video
right.
standpoint. You know what I mean? Like
Yeah,
it's
and Substack's good too.
Substack's awesome and Reddit,
Yeah, yeah.
and it's the wonderful double-edged sword of the internet is it's undefeated,
Sure.
and
Yeah,
you're it, you're just gonna get such a conglomerate of good ideas, and they're probably
yeah,
not coming from OpenAI. They're probably not coming
yeah,
from Claude. They're probably coming
yep,
from the practitioners, and you're just some kid who is just goofing around with VO and figured out how to make a better, Marvel set piece or whatever. And that's like, I kind of started playing around with that and figuring out prompt writing on some video work, and that's kind of where I've gotten my best. Like, oh, cool. Like if you write it in this code, you're going to get a little bit more of a clear understanding. And so that's what I would say is like just see examples that people are doing, like that looks pretty sweet. How did they do it? And a lot of people are sharing the recipes. Like no one's gatekeeping around here. And I think with as a result, like you can kind of bring that back to your creative team. Now you got to be careful because if you get a CMO in there, they're like, well, great, I don't need a videographer anymore. And that's I think a lot of where a lot of the anxiety kind of starts to fester.
yeah,
But the reality is a good
yeah,
CMO looks at it and says, okay, great, we can integrate this with our videographer and make them that much more effective.
yeah.
Um, but
It's dangerous. Like you get the client saying that I can build all these in Lovable. I mean, it's just so easy to
yeah,
do. I
dude,
saw some guy do it, and it's just like it's really not that easy. I think that's a really good point. Is that where I learn the most and I maybe mature the most is wanting to study the stuff from the thought leaders and not from the brands themselves.
yeah,
Like I follow the AI Daily Brief podcast. It's
nice,
really
yeah,
good. Like it's just only 30 minutes, but it keeps you up to date on all the things and it gives me inspiration every day. I think you have to be a seeker of that type of information.
totally.
And man, to get taking it back to your students, do you find that any of them have the time or want to dig into those sources? I mean, if I was in school, I don't know. Back when I was in school, I probably would have just been playing drums or something. But uh, do you,
Yeah.
do you find that do you tell your students like you got to go look for this stuff, and do they do it?
Some. I think it's, I'd say you probably get 5 to 15% that are
Yeah, that's like
industrious enough to
that's
want to take
great.
that on. And that's, and that probably was not dissimilar to how it was 20 years ago, in terms of whoever, like, there's always going to be a minority of folks who are trying to learn a better strategy and a better way forward. And the majority are going to be later adopters. And I mean, that
Mhm.
is human nature. But
Yeah,
with students, I think that the important thing is, it's kind of like talking to my kids, and I've got an almost 3 year old and I've got a 1.5 year old, and we're really big on you can do hard things, and kind of implementing in their brains early on, like, you're saying you can't, but I know you can, and I want to push you to try this. And as you see with your kids, you've got 8 of them. You can see that the more and more they take small steps and they get little wins, the more and more confidence they have to say, I can take on bigger challenges and I think I can be
yeah,
successful. And it's trying to do that because I think so much of, not to like again roast higher education, but a lot of it is predicated around let's let's cattle call all these students into one room, and let's just teach them the path of least resistance, how to be the most average version of an employee you can
yeah,
be hireable, and that's it. But there's not a lot of, hey, you can challenge this and you should
yeah,
challenge this, and you can build something better than what this Fortune 500 company has, because they've just kind of settled the path of least resistance as well. And I think for me as a educator, where I find the most pride and joy is when I see my students start to click and they realize, like, oh, it is it is easier than I thought it was, and it's just a matter
Yeah.
of I didn't see that was a possibility, and, like, for me, I remember in college, the thought of selling a company just felt impossible. And then I saw
Yeah.
one of my best
Yeah.
friends do it, and I realized,
Mhm.
oh, my buddy is not. I mean, he's a smart guy, but he's not the sharpest knife in the drawer. He's smarter than I am. But if he can do it, then
Yeah.
sure, it's obtainable. And I think that's what a lot of students need is just saying like, oh, it is doable, and
Yeah.
then they can handle that. But I don't think we give them great examples right now across the board.
Yeah, maybe what they don't see too, and if any of your students watch this, that, what they don't see now are the conversations I'm having with CMOs where they say, I can't get my team to adopt this stuff." And they're starting to what I tell them, the successful ones that I see are hiring people right out of school
Mm,
that have been AI curious, that have actually gone and done something in AI. They might just know how to prompt, or they might have taken a Python course or
yeah,
just a simple coding course, and they've played around with it. And there's opportunity for them to be hired as the AI junior AI and automation engineer at a company.
yeah.
Marketing teams are all looking for, how do I get my team to do this stuff? And what I tell the senior executives is hire someone right out of school. They don't have to have a CS background. It's probably better that they have a marketing background, but someone that has a marketing background that studied this stuff, just something, and give them the tools and just let them go because they'll learn it. And that it's true. I've seen it happen several times. Well, I hired my son here from,
Yeah.
he went to Franciscan University and he got a biology degree, but he took a Python course. And then he understands it, and so, that it's a huge opportunity for younger people too.
And
Um,
I think to that point too, Kevin, it's like the thing that doesn't necessarily transfer on a resume is grit.
yeah,
And
that's right.
when you see a young person that has a desire and a drive to figure something out and a good attitude, that to me is more valuable than any pedigree. And a
Yeah,
lot of times, what I love about teaching at Concordia University, and it's a great school, and there's great students, and there's great instructors, and admin, but we don't have the pedigree of a University of Texas or fill in the blank.
mhm,
And in some ways, I think that's a benefit because students aren't coming in with like, "Oh, I am Macomb's School of Business." Not that students are like UT has great students, obviously, but I've taught a
mhm,
lot of students, or I've hired a lot of students from UT, A&M, whatever, and you kind of they have to unlearn a lot,
yeah,
and they have to become adaptable and flexible. Versus when you're in an environment where maybe you kind of have a little bit of a chip on your shoulder, or you have a little bit of that Tom Brady. I was not the first round draft pick. I was actually a later round draft pick mindset. It makes you more adaptable and teachable and coachable to make you that much better out the gate. And so I do think that we should focus on finding those diamonds in the rough and empower them. I mean, to your son's point, it's like he had a biology degree, didn't necessarily translate, but he figured it out because at the end of the day, he had the DNA to be curious, and
yeah,
that's really what
that's
you
right.
want. Not to quote Ted
Yeah,
Lasso, but that's the secret ingredient.
yeah, 100%. Yeah, and I've met some of the Concordia students. They're great. Well, Audrey's fantastic,
Yeah,
who we both
she's
know.
awesome.
So, she's working for us now. So, something about those students there, I completely agree.
Yeah.
Now when you look at, human judgment on this work versus what you can automate, and you're also a creative, so you see some of this stuff. Where do you think that human judgment still wins, that you can't automate? You just can't do certain things?
Mm. Let's use Suno as an example. Have you played around with Suno much at
Yeah.
all?
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
it's so fun. It's a
Yeah,
like
they're really fun.
it's a marvel of a tool, and
Yeah.
I'm a songwriter, and I have played around, and you've heard the versions of like and like any other AI output. There is slop, and then there's stuff that's like, dang, that's really good.
Mhm.
But what I've learned in that is Suno's gonna you can say, "Hey, write me a country song about, losing my dog in my truck or whatever." And it'll come with a, by the numbers, generic,
Really
decent
good.
song.
Earworm. Yeah, it's
It's gonna
really
sound like a
just
good earworm.
yeah,
But if you
that's right.
want to really punch up and say, like, how do I get like those lyrics that just stay with you and everything, then you gotta put a little bit more thought in the prompt itself. And like we go in and my buddy Derek and I were, he's my producer on every song I write, and we'll just go back and forth, and we'll have voice memos of like, hey, I think this is the melody for the hook. I think this is the melody coming out of the bridge or the verse, or whatever. Hey, I want this line, like, and we would just kind of tweak it over and over. And then in the process, it just becomes the Suno output becomes that much better to where you're
Yeah.
like, oh, I really, because if something is just a simplified prompt, then you're gonna know within reason, okay, I think that is probably AI, but the more thoughtful your prompt writing becomes, or the inputs become, then the more indistinguishable the output becomes, and you're like, I don't even know this has to be human because it had a very human touch. And I think that's what people are missing in all this. And I know with creatives, the moment you bring up AI, people start to clutch their pearls. But I do think that there is something to be said about the creative process is still at play. You just have to think about it differently. And I guarantee you, every demo that's going out in Nashville or LA or New York is using Suno or some similar tool,
I
because why
agree. Yeah.
wouldn't you? Like, it's
Yeah.
cutting down your turnaround time. And then ultimately you're gonna get that human voice that's gonna come in on top of that. But if it was written by a human on the front end and then you use Suno, similarly to like writing a good article with Claude. I had the idea, I had the thoughts, I had my prompt that I wrote, and I articulated these are the keywords I'm trying to hit, blah blah blah, and then it spits all that out. Then I go in and I tweak it and I massage it. I've still cut down my writing time. The input and the output still human. It's just I cut down a lot of the iteration, and that's what Suno is doing as well. And so I think that's kind of where we're moving and starting to see again. Like, we've been using AI forever, and we've been using it for iteration forever. It's just never been so robust.
Yeah. It's even like that on the development side. Like I have to the other day I was working on something with my son and I was like, "Hey, this isn't right. It needs to be something is happening here." And I had to open up oh, I know. It was styling on a page and I was like, "Well, couldn't we just write classes for these styles?" And I had to tell so it was working in this AI was working in a CMS and it was having a hard time like injecting what we had done into that particular CMS. And it wasn't thinking that it could just name classes inside of the CSS and then just create its own separate
Huh.
CSS file. And I had to tell it that. And that is just a basic the use of classes for CSS. It's like, what? Shouldn't you know that? And this was
Yeah.
using Opus 4.8.
Wow.
And it just got so wrapped around the axle it couldn't figure out the thing. So
Totally.
it's a little now, at the same time, like, it also wrote an app to inject all the stuff direct from
Totally.
HTML into the CMS, and I
Which
was
is
just I
amazing.
couldn't believe
Yeah.
I was blown away that you can run HTML direct into a really rigid CMS, and it just goes in and works perfectly.
Oh,
It's just crazy.
AI's
There's
got
no
me
way I
thinking
could do
I'm an
that.
app developer. It's got me overly confident in a lot of ways, for
Yeah.
sure. Yeah,
But it's amazing how you need to open up Inspect every once in a while and look
totally.
at the code and saying, "Oh, I get it. Here, I did that yesterday just in Webflow. It was like couldn't
Yeah.
figure out this video problem, and I had to open up Inspect and show it to him." So, "Oh yeah, Kevin, yeah, that's the problem." I was like,
And do you
"What?
think that
Why?"
maybe is the biggest hang up right now is with AI, is that we're missing the quality assurance piece? Because we're assuming the trust factor of AI is, oh, it's doing all of it for me. I don't even have to really get in the weeds of
Yeah,
this thing. And I wonder if that's where we're missing out on the best possible version of an AI
yeah.
output.
It's like your Suno example. It's the same thing. It's quality assurance. You know what good is, and you can think of it. It's like I also a couple years ago I had wrote a LinkedIn post about transcribing using AI to transcribe and then getting a transcription of it and then posting something or writing something. People did not like that at all. And I was like, well, it's my thought. I'm just getting
Yeah.
it organized and then I tweak the thing. And now everyone does it. It's
Yeah.
no, it wouldn't be a big deal at all. But it's that QA process that's informed by context that you can't replace. That's why your students, I think, to your point about using AI in the classroom, it's like you have to teach them the context
Yeah.
and then you use the stuff full on. But if you don't know the context, you're just going to become a slop
Totally.
creator.
It does feel like we're kind of playing Moneyball a little bit right now, and you have the
Yeah.
example of like all the scouts back in the day were like, I got a vibe. I've got a vibe I'm going off of, and then you're like, well, okay, but this guy gets on base, and that's what we're trying to accomplish here. And so again,
That's
it's
right.
just it comes down like, what are you trying to solve for, and then it's just going to take a while to coach people to think about the
Yeah.
actual solution.
Yeah. 100%. Cool. Well, this has been great. I could talk to you a lot
Oh,
longer.
same. It's a lot of fun.
Really good stuff. I'll have to have you back on as we get more input into where things are headed. I
Got
do
it.
with this one thing at the end of these podcasts called AI Roulette, and I've
Yeah.
loaded your LinkedIn profile into Claude, and it's going to talk to you as
Ooh,
the AI. This isn't me asking you a
okay.
question, so it's the AI asking. So I'm going to hit send here and see what it gives me. I know you have some very colorful things that you do, so I'm wondering if it picks those up.
Claude's about to put me in my place.
Yeah, that's right. Okay, it says this is from Claude. It says, Sean, my file flags a conflict. By
Hmm.
day, you teach marketers to demand proof before they believe anything.
Hmm.
By night, you're writing a musical about chasing Bigfoot through the woods. I checked, no verified Bigfoot, and you want him real anyway. So which Sean wins, the skeptic or the one chasing footprints?
Oh man, I think the winner is Sean the hypocrite. I think in all of that, yeah, it's eh, I am a walking conundrum. I mean, the thing about Bigfoot is, I will say this: writing this musical, I went into that
People
like a
don't
lot
probably
of
know
people.
about your music. You got to talk about the musical just
Good
real
point.
quick. People probably don't
Okay,
know that.
so my producer buddy Derek and I were also working on a musical called Yeti or Not, and it's about a guy looking for Bigfoot. It's a musical comedy about grief, belief, and Bigfoot. And we've been working on this for about 3 years now. We've got our first we've had a couple table reads, and we have a production of it coming up in March, potentially one in fall 2026. But with all that, in the process of writing, I did my research and I started getting into the folkloric, mythic zeitgeist of Bigfoot. And maybe the skeptic in me has waned, and maybe I'm
Hmm.
starting to actually give it some credence here. But I do think I go into most things. I mean, I don't know. I don't know if it's ADHD or I'm an Enneagram 7 or a youngest born, but I'm generally optimistic. And I do try to come into this of like, hey, I believe that there's a lot of wonderful things that can happen here, but also let's just have, I mean, my wing is an 8 on the Enneagram, which makes me say, but let's actually challenge this and let's actually see if this is resilient. So I'm a walking contradiction internally. I'm always second guessing a lot of my initial thoughts just because I you know I just I want both. I want to find the truth, and also I want to have a good time. And sometimes they're at odds.
There's no way AI could come up with a musical about Bigfoot. There's no way. That would not have crossed the thing. So that is context. That's definitely is the definition of context.
I'd like to
R-
believe so. I'd like to believe so. But AI has definitely helped us in the brainstorming of a musical
Yeah,
about
yeah.
Bigfoot. I'll tell you that much. It has cut
It's
down a
super
lot
cool.
of the writing time.
Yeah, really, really good. I'll have to post about is the musical out? I can't remember if it's
Yeah,
actually out yet.
there's the full demo is out on
Okay.
yetiornotmusical.com, and people can listen
Okay,
to
cool, cool.
all the tracks, which don't worry, humans recorded them. Written by humans, recorded by humans. So for anyone who's gonna spiral out about that, and but at the same time, I think in terms of brainstorming, Claude has helped me ask questions of, well, how would Bigfoot answer this question?
Oh yeah, I can't remember. It's really, really good stuff. Yeah, that's great. And I'll post the link in the promotion that we do here. So Sean, it's been great talking to you. I really
You as
appreciate you
well,
being on.
Kevin. Thanks for the
Really,
time.
really good stuff. Keep doing that. Keep pushing the university system for me.
We'll try. Appreciate you. You need to come speak to the kids
Yeah, I would love to
or
do that.
students.
I'd love to
They're
do that.
students.
Sounds good. Great seeing you.
Have a good one. Bye.
Bye.